I know we're all so thrilled and grateful to Hillary for being here with us tonight. It's my great honor to introduce her. And, I thought a lot about what I was going to say and talk about what amazing leader she's been, her accomplishments as an advocate for children and families, for children's health insurance, as an international leader, all of these other accolades I could lay on her. But I want to tell you from my heart, this person is a great person. She's someone I trust. She's someone I have supported since 2008. And I want to, again, especially thank her for her generosity and her incredible staff who've worked with us on this event, and for being here with us tonight. So, without further ado, Hillary Clinton.
This is one of the most enthusiastic group of Democrats that I've seen anywhere in the country. I love it. Absolutely great. I am thrilled to be here. I know that this is the 10th anniversary of this Plymouth Democratic dinner. I want to thank Deb for not only her introduction, but her friendship and her support over the years. And all of you, it's really exciting to be part of this. I have been looking forward to it because I really believe in building the Democratic Party from the grassroots up. Working in counties and towns and working, obviously, to recruit more people to run, recruit more people to help, and that's what you all are doing. I know that the proceeds from this will be used to help recruit and support local candidates all the way up to the presidential level. So thank you so much for doing this. I've had a great day, an absolutely amazing day. I started out with your wonderful governor, Maggie Hassan, and an event at the University of New Hampshire about how to make college more affordable and how to help young people pay down their college student loans. It means a great deal to me that Maggie endorsed me this morning, and that a few weeks ago, your fabulous Senator, Jeanne Shaheen, endorsed me as well. I don't need to tell this crowd that they are two leaders who know how to get things done, who know how to reach across the aisle and try to achieve results with people who may not agree with you on everything, but to keep looking for that common ground. And I am so grateful for their leadership. I said today to the press that, it means a lot to me. Maggie is a friend of mine. To have her support, but also because I admire her leadership and the fact that she finally got a budget, which is no easy task in dealing with the Republicans in the legislature. That's the kind of leadership that I want to see more of in Washington. To be shamelessly borrowing from what has been successful under her governorship. This campaign, which is off to quite a start with the other side, sort of clearly and consistently pointing out why we must elect a Democrat for the White House in 2016. I say this without any personal or partisan bias. But the country and the economy do better when we have a Democrat in the White House, don't you think? And we can go all the way back, 100, 150 years if we want, but let's just go back 35 years. We've had 5 presidents, 3 Republicans and 2 Democrats. I am privileged to have known both of the Democrats who have been our president. And I can tell you this, they each inherited problems from their predecessors. I don't want us to forget that. And I don't want us to just think everybody knows that. We're going to have to explain. So when my husband became president, thanks greatly to the support that he got here in New Hampshire, he found that the debt had exploded, the deficit had increased, all kinds of economic challenges. So he got to work. 8 years later, 23 million new jobs, but most importantly, incomes went up not just at the top, incomes went up in the bottom too. Everybody benefited from that Democratic presidency that tried to have shared prosperity that would help every family get ahead. And on top of it, ended up with a balanced budget and a surplus. So we were in such a great position to make progress on so many issues because we were absolutely on a path to retire the national debt had we chosen to do so. We could have made Social Security secure for a century or more. We could have made sure that the Medicare Trust Fund was strong. We could have invested in science and research and education. We could have had an early childhood education program and universal pre-kindergarten, which we still need today. But you know what happened. I saw it firsthand. I was honored to be elected to the Senate in New York in 2000. And when I got to the Senate, the new Republican administration made it totally clear to anybody who was paying attention. They wanted to undo the economic policies of the Clinton administration. They wanted to go back to trickle-down economics, and they wanted to cut taxes on the rich and get out of the way of corporations. And they did. And we know the results, don't we? You know, after the '08 election, President-elect Obama called me, asked me to come see him in Chicago. I didn't know why. Turns out he wanted me to be Secretary of State, but before we got to that, he said, you know, the economy is in such worse shape than they even told us. We were not just facing a great recession, we could have had a great depression. We were losing 800,000 jobs a month. Millions of homes being foreclosed on, people's primary wealth just disappearing. And this was all handed to a Democratic president. And so the president-elect said to me, we got problems overseas. We got so many issues we have to deal with. I want you to be Secretary of State, start traveling, restore our leadership. I've got to save the economy. And he did. Barack Obama does not get the credit he deserves for helping us avoid a Great Depression. And so we're now standing. We are in the midst of a recovery. We've regained 12 million jobs, but we're not yet where we need to be. We haven't recovered the jobs or the income or the wealth that was lost. I want to be the president who puts us back on a really firm foundation for shared prosperity, who gets the economy working for everybody again, not just for the rich, the CEOs, the corporations, for everybody. And there are ways we can begin to do that together. Yes, we have to raise the minimum wage. It is too low for a person who works full-time. And I want to do more to make sure that equal pay for equal work is actually implemented and women get their fair share of economic rewards. I want to close the carried interest loophole and take away those deductions and those incentives for companies to move jobs overseas. Those days must end, and we can work on that and make that happen. And I also want to see more people who work hard share in the profits of their productivity, like the market basket example right here in New Hampshire. So I'm absolutely convinced that we can get the economy working for everybody if we have a Democrat to follow President Obama, who had to get us out of the ditch and put us on our feet again, and then we will start running together. And what does the other side offer? You know what they offer, back to trickle-down economics. It's not complicated. Cut taxes on the rich. Get out of the way of corporations, let them exploit workers, let them pollute the environment, let them bust unions, let them do whatever they want to do. We can't let that happen. And so it's our job, me as the candidate, all of you as Democrats here in Plymouth, to make the case to everybody you can talk to. We cannot let them rewrite history again. We have to stand firmly and strongly on behalf of the Democratic Party values that do people who work hard for a living. Now, I'm not running for my husband's third term or Barack Obama's third term. I'm running for my first term, but I will apply the lessons that we learned through presidents. And I'm also looking forward to debating whoever they finally emerge with on their side of the ledger. It's really hard to make up some of the stuff that you hear coming out of them and in these debates and elsewhere. But we're going to have an election about real issues, not about rhetoric. We're going to have an election about the choices that America faces. One of those choices is whether we will finally get serious in confronting climate change, which is an existential threat, and which we can confront and create millions of new jobs at the same time. That is what I find so maddening about the Republican position. Because we can, if we change the incentives from fossil fuels to clean, renewable energy, see an absolute renaissance in new science and research and jobs that are being created. I'll give you just a quick example. I spend some time when I'm not here in New Hampshire, in Iowa. And already in Iowa, they get 30% of their electricity from wind, right? 30%. And what does that mean? It means costs are going down and fossil fuel is not being burned. They're also making great progress in advanced biofuels to the extent that the Defense Department is trying to think about how they can use biofuels instead of jet fuel. These are not pie-in-the-sky ideas. These are happening. I want to set big goals for our country again when it comes to climate change and clean energy. I think we can have the same sense of mission that we did when President Kennedy said, let's send a man to the moon and bring him back. Some of you might actually remember that. And what was so great about it is, people said, we can't do that. We'll never get that done. And he just said, yes, we will. And we did. Well, I want to say we can move toward a clean energy economy that will be good for people's paychecks, good for their jobs, good for their children's futures. I want us to see, by the end of my first term, the installation of 500 million more solar panels in America, and by the end of my second term, enough clean energy to power every home in America. And if we set our mind to this, we will do it together. I also want us to understand the link between our education system and our competitiveness. We have to do more to make every child feel that spark of learning. And I want to work with the teachers of New Hampshire and America to make that happen. I happen to think that the real experts in education are the people standing in front of our children, people who are working to try to light that spark. I have this old-fashioned idea. We ought to look at all of the research that has been done about what works to help kids learn, instead of going from fad to fad to fad. And there are some very clear findings. But there are two pieces of this that are really important to me personally. One is early childhood education. And I remember coming to Plymouth State and talking about these issues years ago. I'm still talking about them, and we're going to work together and get them done. There is, in my view, no more important investment than in the first 5 years of life, both for the individual, but also for our society and our economy. And I don't say that just because I'm a new grandmother, although that's pretty keen and wonderful. I say it because we now know from brain research that if a child gets the right stimulation and support in those early years, that brain will develop. 80% of your brain is physically formed by the age of 3. If you're being stimulated, people are reading to you, talking to you, singing to you, that brain develops in a way that prepares it for vocabulary and for learning. And that's what I want for all of our kids. It shouldn't just be my grandchild and those of you in this room, especially the educators who understand the importance of this. We all have to provide more support so that families understand they are their child's first teachers. And then we need universal pre-K so that kids who need that extra help will be able to get it. Because the achievement gap starts in kindergarten, and it's really hard. If somebody comes in from a family that has a lot of difficulties, where English may not be the first language, where there are health issues or other kinds of challenges in the family, those kids need the community to stand behind them. And it's not only me saying this, or the educators whose heads are nodding. The Nobel Prize-winning economist, Dr. James Heckman at the University of Chicago, has done all the research and has said any country that wants to be competitive in the future should invest in early childhood. And what has convinced me that people are listening to him is he's just been hired as a consultant to the Chinese government to help them set up their universal pre-kindergarten program. And I take that really seriously. I have no intention as your president in standing idly by while any nation is better prepared for the future than we are. So we're going to do what we can on early childhood education. And then on the other end, we're going to make college affordable again. And today, at the University of New Hampshire, the governor and I talked about the issues around that. My plan, which is called the New College Compact, and please go on my website and study it and see how it would affect you or someone you know. We would make it possible for any student at a public college or university to be able to pay tuition without borrowing any money, because we will support through the federal government those states and institutions that work to bring costs down and work to help support students who need financial assistance so they don't go into debt to be able to go to college. We will also refinance all the debt. It makes absolutely no sense. You can refinance your mortgage, you can refinance your car, you can't refinance your student loans. And we have students right here in New Hampshire who owe tens of thousands of dollars at interest rates of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10%, when interest rates have been, as you know, much lower than that now for a number of years. This is one of the biggest challenges young people face. And we had a couple of students who talked about their particular situations at the university as Maggie and I conducted this town hall. And it's heartbreaking because they are trying to do everything they can to get ahead in America. They're going to school. They're making the sacrifice, and they just feel like they're hamsters running in the cage. And I want to make sure we do what President Obama has recommended. Let's make community college free, because the 2 years at community college should be like adding to comprehensive high school as it was in the past. And everything I am putting forth in this campaign, I tell you how I will pay for it. I tell you where the money will come from, because I take seriously the stewardship of the federal dollars. But I also tell you that we have to make these investments, because we need to get richer and stronger and smarter, and we especially need that for our kids. I will also defend the Affordable Care Act. I believe in it. I think it's made a huge difference in the lives of so many people. It has to be improved. There are problems with it. We've got some issues with small businesses, with not enough choice by the insurance companies, with costs still being too high. We have to address that. But when the other side tells you that they want to repeal the Affordable Care Act, I don't know who they talk to. Certainly not one of the 16 million people who are benefiting from it. This young woman today at the University of New Hampshire, she said, look, I have my master's in teaching. I'm looking for a job. I needed reconstructive surgery on my shoulder, and thanks to the Affordable Care Act, I'm still on my parents' policy, which she can be until she's 26. There's so many people who have benefited. We must defend it. But there are 3 issues I want to lay before you and solicit your advice on. The first is we are moving toward a caregiving crisis in America. If you take all of the situations where people are thankfully living longer but need help in being able to live, Alzheimer's, autism, you name them, we are going to have so many people who need to be supported as they do what they want to do for their loved ones. I met a woman in Dover at a town hall. She said, I rushed over here because I want to ask you, what can you do to help me? I'm taking care of my husband who has Alzheimer's and my mother who has Alzheimer's. She told me we're spending everything we have. I can't work because I've got to be in the home, because if I go out to work, I won't make enough money to have the people who would take care of them anyway. I don't want to give them up. I feel like this is what I'm supposed to do. I just need a little help. I hear that from so many people. A woman last night in Concord said to me, I have an autistic son. He's getting older. What am I supposed to do? I'm no longer young. I can't take care of him the way he needs to, but I don't want to send him away. I want to take care of him. We're going to have to come together as a nation to figure out how we do this. Secondly, untreated mental health is one of the biggest problems I hear about everywhere I go. You know, we changed the law. We're supposed to be able to get treatment for mental health just like any other kind of health issue. But that's not what happens. People often don't get the help they need, or the help that they are offered through their insurance policy or through Medicaid or Medicare is not up to what is required. We've got to end the stigma on mental health treatment, and we've got to figure out how we're going to be more efficient, because if we don't, we're going to still see our prisons and our jails flooded with people with mental health problems. And one of the reasons why we now have a substance abuse epidemic in New Hampshire and elsewhere is because people with untreated mental health medicate themselves with alcohol or drugs. I was in Laconia at a town hall yesterday. There were like 700 people. It was truly like a sauna. It was so hot. Nobody, well, maybe one person passed out, but people were riveted. They didn't move because we were talking about addiction. We were talking about overdoses. The police chief was talking about how they've changed their approach to policing to heroin. A woman stood up and she said, you know, it's too late for us. Her son died of an overdose. She said, but I want to talk about what needs to happen that can help others. I have a plan for how we can do more to support what is happening here in New Hampshire and elsewhere. But we cannot ignore it. In 2013, we had more deaths by overdoses than car accidents. This is not just some small problem that only affects a few people. We don't have enough treatment, enough prevention, and we don't have enough police that are doing the really pioneering work that you see in Laconia. We've got to work together on this. And one issue is we've got to supply police with the antidotes to heroin, like Narcan and Naxalone, so that they can save lives. Carrying it around, like if somebody has an allergy attack and you give them a shot of, adrenaline, well, we've got to have this available until we figure out how to break this epidemic. There's a lot that I think about as a presidential campaign that is not always in the headlines. It's not always the big issues that get all the attention, but they are the concerns that people raise with me when they take me aside and talk to me about what's going on in their lives. Today, Maggie and I were taking pictures before we went out to do the town hall. And a woman standing in line, a leader in the community, we took the picture, and then she turned and she said to both of us, "Please do something about heroin. We just lost my son." Everywhere I go. Now, in addition to trying to see how we can work together to solve these problems, I will defend human rights and civil rights in our country, starting with defending a woman's right to choose and defending Planned Parenthood. I was disheartened. I was appalled at what all of the Republicans were saying. They were making misleading, untrue comments. And they went further than that. Some of them want to shut down the United States government to deny women basic health services, cancer screenings, family planning, HIV testing. That is so inexcusable and indefensible. It's wrong on the merits, but it's terrible for our country to look like we can't govern ourselves. To see the Republicans willing to literally stop our government. You know what that sends a message to the rest of the world about? America just can't get its act together. They can't make decisions. They can't pay their debts. That weakens us. It puts us on the defense. And we cannot let that happen. It's one of the many reasons why we have to elect a Democrat in 2016. And I will also defend marriage equality and stand against discrimination against the LGBT community. I will defend voting rights and stop the efforts in many parts of our country to take away that most basic constitutional right. And I want to see every 18-year-old automatically registered and sign them up to be part of our democracy and exercise their vote. I will fight against the pernicious, corrupting effects of Citizens United and the dark, unaccountable money that it has let loose in our political system. I feel so strongly about this that obviously I will appoint Supreme Court justices who care more about a person's right to vote than a corporation's right to buy an election. And I will, if necessary, support a constitutional amendment to undo Citizens United so that we can get back to regulating the money that is used to finance our campaigns. I will continue to fight for comprehensive immigration reform, for policing reform, to move away from the era of incarceration, to make it possible for us to try to bring our country together again. And when it comes to the work we need to do around the world, I believe in diplomacy. I spent 4 years as your chief diplomat. I know it is the most important and tool. I did get kind of amused the other day when some of the Republican candidates were saying, "Well, I don't know. What has she ever done?" So I'm going to send them all a copy of my book. And I'm going to tell them maybe to read the chapters about how I put together the coalition to impose sanctions on Iran, or maybe how I negotiated a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, or maybe how I got a blind dissident out of China when China didn't want to let him go. I mean, just to give them some information that maybe they will find educational and informative. But for me, this is serious business. We have a lot of opportunities in the world, and we have a lot of challenges. And we need to be smart about how we bring the world to us as we meet those challenges. And there's no substitute for the hard, daily grind of diplomacy. It's not glamorous. It doesn't show up in the headlines. But there is no alternative. In the United States, we must lead by our values and do everything we can to keep peace and prosperity and security. And I pledge to you I will do just that as your president. Now, finally, because I want to have a chance to walk around with Deb and greet everybody, but finally I want to say this. People run for president for many different motives. That's kind of baked into the recipe about who wants to run for president and what that person believes can be accomplished. And I respect that. There's no one path to running for president or serving as president. But I want to tell you what motivates me. What motivates me is that I had the great good fortune of having parents who instilled in me the ethic of service and made it clear to me that a lot was expected from those of us who had the opportunity to give back. I'm the granddaughter of a factory worker. My grandfather went to work every single day in the Scranton lace mills, not unlike this old mill and factory that we're in today. And he did it to support his family, but he also did it because he wanted a better life for his sons. And he sent all 3 of his sons to college. He was an immigrant, and he lived the American dream. My dad, after serving in the Navy, started a small business. It was a really small business, but it produced a good, solid, middle-class life for us. And I'm now standing before you, 3rd generation, asking for your support in my campaign to be president. My mother's life was very different. She was abandoned and rejected by her parents and her grandparents. By the age of 14, she was working as a housemaid. And I didn't know any of that about her when I was just a little girl. I just knew she was my mom. But as I got older and learned more of her story, I was so amazed. And I would ask her, how did you survive? How did you avoid becoming broken and bitter? And she said, along the way, people showed kindness to me. The first grade teacher who saw I didn't have enough to eat, who brought extra food. The woman whose house she cleaned, saying, I know you want to go to high school. If you can get your work done early in the morning, you can go to high school. So my mother did. She would run to high school, and then she would run back and finish the work she had to do. So for me, it's that combination of what our nation stands for, the opportunities that are provided. In the case of my father's family, the hard work paying off, the education being there to be taken advantage of, the free market, the business opportunities that my dad, worked hard to take advantage of himself. And then for my mom, it was the kindness of people. As your president, I can't mandate kindness. But I'm going to talk a lot about it because I believe that we are better when we support each other, when we care about each other, when we respect each other. I can't stand this mean-spirited, hateful rhetoric that we're hearing too much of today, that demeans people, that separates us versus them, that points fingers at people for being different, or who their parents are, or their religion, or where they're from. So I will work hard to do everything I tell you I intend to do as your president, on climate change and energy and the economy and education, healthcare, all of it. But I will also constantly be asking all of us to remember people like my mom, who made it through life because others made her feel like she mattered. And there are a lot of kids, and there are a lot of people in New Hampshire and America today who don't feel like they do. So we have our work cut out for us, but it's important work. It's work that can lift us up and move us forward together. And I also believe with all my heart that as much as I love and adore my granddaughter, I don't want her to be one of the few in America that can still achieve her dreams. You shouldn't have to be the granddaughter of a former president to be able to climb that ladder of opportunity. You should be able to be the granddaughter of a factory worker or the grandson of a truck driver or anybody else in America. So we're going to build that country together, and we're going to make it possible for us to believe that our best days are still ahead of us. And we're also going to make sure that every father can say to his daughter, you can be anything you want to be, including President of the United States. Thank you all.